The air crackled with unspoken tension at Amelia's annual summer garden party. Champagne flutes clinked nervously, and polite chatter barely masked the underlying drama everyone knew was about to unfold. Today was the day Sarah Mark's ex-wife dared to show her face for the first time since their acrimonious split. A split accelerated by the dazzling arrival of Isabella Mark's much younger trophy mistress. Isabella, with her perfectly sculpted features and designer dress, had already made her presence felt. Her sharp, condescending glances a constant reminder of Sarah's perceived downfall. As a familiar, slightly sputtering engine echoed from the driveway, a hush fell over the manicured lawns. It was Sarah's old Volvo, a reliable but decidedly unglamorous vehicle, pulling into view. A smirk played on Isabella's lips, a cruel, silent laugh that hung heavy in the humid afternoon air. But little did she know the punchline was yet to come. A twist of fate orchestrated by a powerful and unexpected admirer, a revelation that would leave Isabella's triumphant grin frozen in disbelief, and the entire gathering gasping for breath. Amelia's garden parties were legendary, sprawling affairs held on the manicured lawns of her historic estate just outside of Boston. The guest list was a carefully curated mix of the city's elite influential lawyers, successful entrepreneurs, and the occasional artist or philanthropist. This year, however, the usual festive atmosphere was tinged with a palpable sense of anticipation, a morbid curiosity surrounding the inevitable confrontation between Sarah and Isabella. Sarah and Mark had been the quintessential power couple for over 15 years. They had built a life together, a beautiful home in Beacon Hill, 2 bright children, and a respected position within their social circle. Their divorce 2 years prior had been a messy and public affair, fueled by rumors of Mark's infidelity. Isabella, a striking woman with an ambitious glint in her eyes, had been the catalyst. She was younger, vivacious, and everything Sarah in her quiet elegance and understated style was not. Mark, predictably, had paraded Isabella around town, their whirlwind romance a stark contrast to his stable but seemingly now boring marriage. Isabella had quickly established herself as the new queen bee in Mark's life, attending charity galas on his arm, jetting off to exotic locales, and basking in the reflected glow of his considerable wealth. Sarah, meanwhile, had retreated, focusing on her children, her work as a landscape architect, and the quiet rebuilding of her life. The invitation to Amelia's party had been a surprise. Sarah hadn't seen Mark or Isabella in months, and the thought of facing them along with their smug circle of friends filled her with a familiar dread. Yet there was a quiet resilience in Sarah now, a strength forged in the fires of heartbreak and self-discovery. She decided to attend not to prove anything to Mark or Isabella, but to reclaim her place, to show herself and her children's friends' parents that she was still standing still. Sarah. As Sarah's aging Volvo, a testament to years of family road trips and school runs, chugged its way up Amelia's long driveway. Isabella stood on the sprawling terrace, a crystal flute of champagne in her manicured hand. She was the picture of effortless chic in a flowing silk dress, her dark hair styled in loose waves that cascaded over her shoulders. A diamond pendant, a recent gift from Mark, glittered at her throat. A thin smile stretched across Isabella's perfectly painted lips as she spotted the familiar car. She nudged Tiffany, Mark's sister, who stood beside her, a knowing look passing between them. Tiffany, ever loyal to her brother, and now seemingly captivated by Isabella's glamorous lifestyle, offered a tight, insincere smile in return. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence," Isabella murmured, her voice laced with a condescending sweetness that didn't quite reach her cold eyes. I almost forgot about the vintage collection. A few nearby guests, eager to be in Isabella's orbit, chuckled nervously. The subtle jab hung in the air, a reminder of the perceived disparity between Sarah's old life and Isabella's shiny new one. Sarah parked the Volvo with practiced ease, the familiar rumble of the engine, a comforting sound amidst the opulent surroundings. She took a deep breath, adjusted the simple but elegant linen dress she wore, and stepped out of the car. The afternoon sun caught the silver strands that had begun to appear in her otherwise rich brown hair, a subtle sign of the stress she had endured. She walked towards the gathering, her chin held high, her gaze steady. She greeted Amelia with a warm hug, ignoring the subtle shift in the hostess's usually effusive demeanor. Amelia, caught between her long-standing friendship with Sarah and her desire to remain in Mark's and Isabella's good graces, offered a weak smile. As Sarah moved further into the garden, the whispers followed her like shadows. She could feel the weight of their gazes, the silent judgments being passed. She saw Mark standing near the bar, his arm possessively around Isabella's waist. He caught her eye, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face before he quickly looked away. Isabella, however, met Sarah's gaze with a triumphant smirk, her eyes glinting with undisguised amusement. Still driving that old thing, Sarah Isabella called out, her voice carrying across the lawn. I would have thought Mark would have at least bought you something newer in the divorce settlement. Her laughter, sharp and brittle, echoed through the stunned silence. Sarah stopped her back to Isabella. For a moment, a wave of humiliation washed over her. The Volvo was old. It was true, a constant reminder of a life that had been dismantled. But it was also reliable, paid for, and had carried her and her children safely for years. It was a symbol of her independence, a small piece of her past that she hadn't been willing to let go of. She turned slowly, a calm smile gracing her lips. It gets me where I need to go. Isabella, she replied, her voice steady and even. Unlike some things, it's reliable. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sarah's understated retort with its subtle barb had landed its mark. Isabella's smile faltered slightly, her eyes narrowing. Before Isabella could formulate a cutting response, a different kind of commotion began near the entrance of the driveway. The low rumble of a powerful engine, a sound far more luxurious than Sarah's Volvo, began to grow louder. All heads turned, drawn by the approaching vehicle. A sleek silver Rolls-Royce Phantom glided into view, its polished surface gleaming in the afternoon sun. The car moved with an almost silent grace, a majestic beast amongst the more commonplace vehicles parked along the drive. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as the chauffeur smoothly brought the car to a stop, directly behind Sarah's Volvo. The chauffeur, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, stepped out and opened the rear passenger door. All eyes were glued to the car, a silent question hanging in the air. Who could be arriving in such a grand manner? Sarah herself was surprised, her brow furrowed in confusion. She wasn't expecting anyone. Then a hand emerged from the car. A manicured hand adorned with a simple but elegant diamond bracelet. It rested on the door frame for a moment before a woman gracefully stepped out. It was Sarah. Another gasp swept through the crowd, this one louder, more disbelieving than the last. This Sarah, the one stepping out of the Rolls-Royce, looked different. Her linen dress, while still simple, now exuded an air of quiet confidence. Her silver-streaked hair seemed less a sign of stress and more a mark of distinguished elegance. But it was the car, the sheer audacity of her arrival in such a vehicle, that had everyone stunned. Isabella's face, moments before, alight with cruel amusement, now registered a mixture of shock and disbelief. Her champagne flute trembled slightly in her hand. Mark stood frozen, his arm dropping from Isabella's waist as he stared at his ex-wife. Sarah closed the car door with a soft thud, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. She turned to face the stunned gathering, her gaze sweeping over their bewildered faces, finally settling on Isabella. "Oh, Isabella," Sarah said, her voice calm and composed. "I forgot to mention. This was a gift." The silence that followed Sarah's pronouncement was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every eye remained fixed on her, and the gleaming Rolls-Royce behind her. The carefully constructed facade of polite sophistication at Amelia's garden party had shattered, replaced by a raw, unadulterated curiosity. Isabella was the first to break the silence, her voice tight with disbelief. A gift from whom she demanded her composure visibly cracking. Sarah allowed a small, enigmatic smile to play on her lips. From someone who appreciates reliability, and a woman who knows her worth, she said, her gaze holding Isabella's. Mark finally found his voice, his tone a mixture of confusion and suspicion. "Sarah, what's going on? Who gave you that car?" Sarah turned to face her ex-husband, her expression cool and distant. "That Mark is none of your concern anymore." The tension in the air was palpable. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd, speculating wildly about the identity of Sarah's mysterious benefactor. Was it a secret lover? A wealthy relative? A long-lost admirer? Amelia, ever the gracious hostess, though clearly flustered, attempted to regain control of the situation. "Sarah, darling," she said, her voice a little too bright. "How wonderful. Do tell us all about it." Sarah nodded, her gaze sweeping over the curious faces. A few months ago, she began, her voice clear and steady. "I met Mr. Alistair Finch." A ripple of recognition went through the crowd. Alistair Finch was a name that commanded respect and a certain level of awe in Boston's business circles. He was a self-made billionaire, the CEO of a global technology conglomerate known for his sharp intellect, his discerning taste, and his reclusive nature. He rarely made public appearances, and his personal life was shrouded in secrecy. "Alistair Finch." Isabella repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. "You know Alistair Finch?" Sarah met her gaze calmly. "Yes, I do." How Mark interjected, his voice sharp with jealousy. Sarah ignored him, focusing on Isabella. "We met through a mutual acquaintance, a client of my landscaping business. We had a rather stimulating conversation about the importance of timeless design and enduring quality." She paused, allowing the implication to sink in. Alistair Finch, a man who could buy anything he wanted, had chosen to gift her a Rolls-Royce, a symbol of timeless luxury and enduring quality. The contrast between this extravagant gesture and Isabella's earlier mockery of her vintage Volvo was not lost on anyone. Tiffany Mark's sister stepped forward, her expression a mixture of envy and disbelief. "But why would Alistair Finch give you a car? A Rolls-Royce, no less." Sarah's smile widened slightly. "Finch is a man who appreciates potential," she said cryptically. "He saw something in me, something beyond the confines of a discarded marriage." The implication was clear. While Mark had traded her in for a younger model, a man of Alistair Finch's stature had recognized her true value. Isabella, visibly shaken, tried to regain control of the narrative. "Don't be ridiculous, Sarah. He probably just felt sorry for you." Sarah's eyes flashed with a hint of steel. "I hardly think a man of Mr. Finch's acumen makes charitable donations in the form of luxury automobiles to people he pities Isabella." The crowd murmured in agreement. Isabella's attempt to belittle Sarah's unexpected fortune had fallen flat. Mark, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and humiliation, stepped closer to Sarah. "What exactly is your relationship with Finch?" he demanded, his voice low and possessive. Sarah tilted her head, a look of cool amusement in her eyes. "As I said, Mark, that is none of your concern anymore. My life, including my friendships and the generous gifts I receive, is now my own." She turned away from him, addressing Amelia. "Amelia, the garden looks as lovely as ever. Would you mind if I freshened up inside?" Amelia, recovering slightly from her shock, quickly agreed, eager to diffuse the tense situation. "Of course, Sarah, dear. Let me show you the way." As Sarah walked towards the house, Amelia subtly steered her away from the main throng of guests, a worried expression on her face. "Sarah," she began, her voice hushed, "what is really going on? Alistair Finch. He's a very powerful man." Sarah smiled faintly. "Yes, he is. And he's also a very kind and perceptive man." Inside the house in the cool sanctuary of Amelia's drawing room, Sarah finally allowed herself a small sigh of relief. The confrontation which she had dreaded had turned out to be far more satisfying than she could have imagined. The look on Isabella's face, the bewildered confusion on Mark's, it had been almost worth the anxiety of attending the party. But beneath the surface of her composure, a sense of unease lingered. Her relationship with Alistair Finch was still in its early stages, a surprising and somewhat surreal turn in her life. The Rolls-Royce was just one aspect of his unexpected generosity. He had also offered her a significant investment in her landscaping business, a chance to expand and realize her long-held ambitions. She knew that her sudden association with a man of Alistair Finch's stature would inevitably lead to gossip and speculation. People would question her motives, his motives, the nature of their connection. But for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt a sense of empowerment. She was no longer defined by her failed marriage or her ex-husband's dismissiveness. She was Sarah, a woman who had caught the attention of a man who saw her potential, a woman who was driving a Rolls-Royce gifted by a billionaire CEO. The immediate aftermath of Sarah's arrival in the Rolls-Royce was a frenzy of hushed conversations and furtive glances. The focus of Amelia's garden party had shifted dramatically, the spotlight now firmly fixed on Sarah and the mystery surrounding her connection to Alistair Finch. Isabella, her initial shock, giving way to a simmering resentment, cornered Tiffany near the rose bushes. "This is ridiculous," she hissed, her voice tight with anger. "There has to be some explanation. Alistair Finch doesn't just hand out Rolls-Royces." Tiffany, her eyes still wide with a mixture of awe and envy, could only stammer, "I don't know, Isabella. Maybe they're old friends or business partners." "Business partners?" Isabella scoffed. "Sarah. With Alistair Finch. Don't be naive, Tiffany. There's something else going on here." Her gaze drifted towards the house, where Sarah was still talking with Amelia, a thoughtful expression on her face. Mark, meanwhile, was pacing near the bar, nursing a strong drink. He couldn't shake the image of Sarah stepping out of that luxurious car, a picture of unexpected poise and confidence. A wave of regret mixed with a potent dose of jealousy washed over him. Had he misjudged Sarah? Had he been too quick to dismiss her for the flashier allure of Isabella? He approached Tiffany and Isabella, his expression troubled. "Did Sarah say how she knew Finch?" Only that they met through a client, Tiffany replied, echoing Sarah's words. Mark frowned. A client? Sarah's landscaping business is small. What kind of client would connect her with Alistair Finch? Isabella's eyes narrowed. Exactly. It doesn't add up. She tapped a manicured nail against her chin, her mind racing. There has to be a connection we're missing. Something personal. As the party wore on, Sarah became the center of attention, albeit a somewhat cautious attention. Guests who had barely acknowledged her arrival in her Volvo now found reasons to strike up conversations, their questions veiled attempts to uncover the nature of her relationship with the elusive billionaire. Sarah remained gracious, but evasive, offering only carefully worded answers that revealed little. She spoke about Alistair Finch's appreciation for her design work, his interest in her vision for her business, and his unexpected generosity. She painted a picture of a professional connection that had blossomed into a surprising friendship, carefully omitting any details that might fuel further speculation about a romantic involvement. Meanwhile, Isabella, fueled by a growing insecurity, launched her own subtle investigation. She casually questioned mutual acquaintances, trying to find any hint of a prior connection between Sarah and Alistair Finch. She subtly probed Amelia, who, though sworn to secrecy by Sarah, couldn't entirely mask her own surprise and curiosity. The more Isabella dug, the more frustrated she became. There seemed to be no logical explanation for Finch's sudden interest in Sarah. He was known for his sharp business acumen and his guarded personal life. Why would he bestow such an extravagant gift on his ex-wife? Later in the afternoon, Alistair Finch himself became the topic of conversation among a group of influential businessmen. They spoke of his recent acquisition of a major tech startup, his rumored interest in sustainable energy, and his philanthropic endeavors. None of them could recall ever hearing his name linked romantically with anyone in Boston society. "He's a bit of a recluse, isn't he?" commented Charles, a prominent lawyer. "Keeps to himself. You rarely see him at these kinds of events." "That's right," agreed David, "a real estate developer. I've met him a few times on business dealings. Very sharp, very focused. Not the kind of man I'd picture. Showering gifts on anyone, unless there's a very strategic reason." Their words, though not intended to be overheard by Sarah, added another layer of intrigue to the situation. Was Alistair Finch's generosity towards Sarah purely altruistic? Or was there a hidden motive? As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across Amelia's manicured lawns, Sarah prepared to leave. She thanked Amelia for the invitation, her tone genuine. She had faced her ex-husband and his new partner, not with bitterness or resentment, but with a quiet dignity and an unexpected trump card. As she walked towards the Rolls-Royce, the chauffeur already holding the door open, she noticed Mark standing alone near the fountain, his expression a mixture of regret and bewilderment. Isabella stood a few feet away, her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on Sarah with unconcealed animosity. Sarah paused for a moment, meeting Mark's gaze. There was no triumph in her eyes, only a quiet sense of closure. She had moved on, and in doing so had inadvertently exposed the fragility of his new life with Isabella. She then turned to Isabella, a faint smile gracing her lips. "Goodbye, Isabella," she said softly. "It seems some vintage things appreciate in value over time." With that, she stepped into the luxurious embrace of the Rolls-Royce. The chauffeur closed the door, and the car glided silently down the driveway, leaving behind a stunned and gossiping crowd. As Sarah settled into the plush leather seats, she couldn't help but feel a sense of exhilaration, mixed with a touch of disbelief. Her life had taken an unexpected turn, a turn orchestrated by a man she barely knew, but who had seen something in her that her own husband had failed to recognize. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt a flicker of genuine hope and excitement. The old Volvo, still parked further down the driveway, seemed to represent a chapter of her life that was now firmly closed. A new, more luxurious chapter had begun. The days following Amelia's garden party were a whirlwind for Sarah. Her unexpected arrival in the Rolls-Royce had become the talk of Boston society, the subject of countless conversations and speculative articles in the local gossip columns. Her landscaping business, once a steady but relatively low-profile venture, was now flooded with inquiries, many from people simply curious to meet the woman who had captured the attention of Alistair Finch. Alistair himself remained an enigmatic presence in Sarah's life. He called her occasionally, his voice calm and measured, to inquire about her well-being and the progress of her business. He offered insightful advice and unwavering support, but he maintained a respectful distance, allowing Sarah to navigate the storm of attention in her own way. One afternoon, a sleek black car, not the Rolls-Royce, pulled up outside Sarah's modest home. A different chauffeur emerged and handed Sarah a discreet envelope. Inside was an invitation to a private dinner at Alistair Finch's secluded estate on the coast. Sarah accepted the invitation with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. She knew that this dinner would likely shed more light on Alistair's intentions and the nature of their burgeoning connection. A few days later, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the ocean, Sarah arrived at Alistair Finch's estate. The house was a sprawling, modern architectural marvel, all glass and steel, nestled seamlessly into the rugged coastline. Alistair greeted her warmly at the door, his presence surprisingly down to earth, despite his immense wealth and power. He was a tall, distinguished man, with silvering hair and piercing blue eyes that held a hint of both intensity and kindness. He was dressed casually in a tailored sweater and slacks, and his demeanor was relaxed and welcoming. Over a beautifully prepared dinner, they talked for hours. Alistair spoke about his passion for technology, his vision for a sustainable future, and his belief in supporting innovative and driven individuals. He told Sarah that he had been impressed by her resilience, her talent, and her quiet determination. "I saw in you, Sarah," he said, his gaze direct a woman who had been underestimated, a woman with untapped potential. The car, it was a symbol, a way to show you and perhaps the world the value I see in you. Sarah was touched by his words, his genuine belief in her. She explained her vision for her landscaping business, her commitment to creating beautiful and sustainable outdoor spaces. Alistair listened intently, offering insightful suggestions and expressing his continued support. As the evening drew to a close, Alistair addressed the unspoken question that hung in the air. "Sarah," he said, his tone becoming more serious, "I am aware of the rumors and the speculation surrounding our association. I want you to know that my intentions are purely honorable. I admire you, your strength and your talent. My interest in you is genuine." Sarah met his gaze, a sense of gratitude and a growing respect filling her heart. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that she had found an unexpected ally and a true believer in Alistair Finch. Meanwhile, Mark and Isabella's relationship was beginning to show cracks under the strain of Sarah's sudden elevation in status. Isabella, consumed by jealousy and insecurity, constantly questioned Mark about his ex-wife, demanding to know if he had any inkling of Sarah's connection to Finch. Mark, still reeling from the shock of Sarah's transformation and the subtle humiliation he had felt at the garden party, grew increasingly resentful of Isabella's constant accusations. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a mistake, that he had traded genuine worth for fleeting glamour. One evening, they had a heated argument. "You still care about her, don't you?" Isabella accused, her voice shrill. "You're jealous of her new life." Mark lashed out, his frustration boiling over. "Why are you so obsessed with Sarah? She's my ex-wife. It's over." "But it's not over for you." "Is it?" Isabella retorted, her eyes blazing. "You can't stand the fact that she's moved on, that she's with someone powerful, someone who appreciates her in a way you never did." Their argument escalated, revealing the deep insecurities and resentments that had been simmering beneath the surface of their relationship. The glamorous facade they had so carefully constructed was beginning to crumble. Tiffany, caught in this middle, tried to mediate, but the tension between her brother and Isabella was palpable. She couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Had Mark made a mistake in choosing Isabella over Sarah? Had they both underestimated Sarah's strength and resilience? The contrast between Sarah's quiet dignity and Isabella's increasingly frantic attempts to maintain her position was stark. While Sarah was forging a new path, supported by an unexpected benefactor, Isabella was clinging desperately to a relationship that seemed to be faltering under the weight of her own insecurities. The tables had turned, and the laughter that had once been directed at Sarah now seemed to echo back at Isabella. Weeks turned into months, and the initial shock waves of Sarah's Rolls-Royce arrival gradually subsided, though the underlying curiosity about her relationship with Alistair Finch remained. Sarah, however, refused to be drawn into the gossip mill. She focused on her business, which was now thriving thanks to Alistair's investment and the increased attention it had received. She hired a small team, expanded her services, and began to take on larger, more prestigious projects. Her children, initially confused by the sudden change in their mother's circumstances, were reassured by her calm demeanor and her continued love and support. They even developed a fondness for the sleek Rolls-Royce, which Sarah used sparingly, mostly for business engagements. Mark and Isabella's relationship continued its downward spiral. The constant bickering and accusations had taken their toll, and the initial spark that had drawn them together had long since faded. Isabella's insecurity about Sarah, coupled with Mark's growing regret, created an unbridgeable chasm between them. One evening, Mark called Sarah, his voice hesitant. It was the first time he had reached out to her directly since the garden party. "Sarah," he began, I wanted to apologize." Sarah was surprised by his call. She listened quietly as he stumbled through an apology for his behavior during their marriage and his insensitivity after their divorce. He admitted that he had been blinded by Isabella's allure and that he had failed to appreciate her true worth. Sarah accepted his apology with grace, but she made it clear that their past was behind them. She had moved on, and while she wished him well, there was no going back. Shortly after Mark's call, news broke that he and Isabella had separated. The Boston Society pages buzzed with the news, speculating about the reasons for their split. Some whispered about Sarah's influence, others about Isabella's increasingly demanding behavior. Sarah paid little attention to the gossip. Her focus was on her children and her burgeoning career. Her friendship with Alistair Finch continued to deepen, evolving into a comfortable companionship built on mutual respect and admiration. They shared similar values and a quiet understanding of the challenges and rewards of success. One afternoon, Alistair invited Sarah to attend a charity gala with him. It was a high-profile event, the kind that Isabella had once relished attending on Mark's arm. Sarah hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready to step back into the social spotlight in such a public way. Alistair gently reassured her. "Sarah," he said, "you don't need to prove anything to anyone. But if you're willing, I would be honored to have you by my side." Sarah accepted his invitation. She chose a simple yet elegant gown, and with Alistair by her side, made her entrance at the gala. The reaction was immediate and palpable. Heads turned, whispers filled the air, and all eyes were on Sarah and her distinguished companion. Isabella was also at the gala, accompanied by a new, older man with a significant fortune. When she saw Sarah and Alistair together, her face paled. The contrast between her own situation and Sarah's newfound prominence was stark. Throughout the evening, Sarah carried herself with poise and confidence. She engaged in conversations with ease, her intelligence and genuine warmth shining through. Alistair remained a supportive presence by her side, his admiration for her evident in his eyes. As the night drew to a close, Alistair took Sarah's hand. "You were magnificent tonight," he said softly. Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of quiet triumph. She had not only weathered the storm of her divorce, but had emerged stronger and more successful than ever before. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and Alistair's relationship continued to evolve. They shared quiet dinners, attended cultural events, and discovered a deep connection that went beyond mere friendship. Alistair admired Sarah's resilience, her intelligence and her kind heart. Sarah, in turn, was drawn to Alistair's wisdom, his integrity, and his unwavering support. One evening, as they sat on the terrace of his estate overlooking the moonlit ocean, Alistair turned to Sarah, his expression tender. "Sarah," he said, "meeting you has been one of the greatest surprises of my life. You have brought a light and a joy into my world that I never thought possible." He paused, then took her hand in his. "Sarah, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She looked into Alistair's eyes, seeing the genuine love and affection reflected there. A wave of happiness washed over her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. "Yes, Alistair," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears of joy. "Yes, I would be honored." The news of Sarah and Alistair Finch's engagement did not so much ripple through Boston society as it did detonate. It was the ultimate unforeseen chapter in a story that had already captivated the city's elite. The gossip columns, which had feasted for weeks on the Rolls-Royce revelation, now had a veritable banquet. Headlines proclaimed the union a billion-dollar romance and a modern-day fairy tale, painting Sarah as a triumphant heroine who had risen from the ashes of a painful divorce to capture the heart of one of the nation's most elusive and powerful men. For Sarah's true friends, like Amelia, the news was a source of profound joy. Amelia called Sarah the moment she heard her voice, effervescent with genuine happiness. "I knew it," she exclaimed. "The way he looked at you at my party, even after all the drama. There was something there. Osra, you deserve this more than anyone." The engagement party Amelia insisted on hosting was an intimate and elegant affair, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere of her summer garden party. It was filled with sincere laughter and heartfelt toasts, a celebration not just of a couple's love, but of a woman's remarkable second act. For Mark, the announcement was a final devastating blow. He read the news on his tablet one morning over a sterile breakfast in the minimalist apartment he now occupied alone. The coffee turned bitter in his mouth. It wasn't just all jealousy or regret. It was a profound and hollow sense of loss. He saw the professionally taken engagement photo Sarah, looking radiant and serene, her hand resting comfortably in Alistair's, her smile genuine and unburdened. This was a happiness he had never truly given her, a peace he had actively taken away. That evening, he called his sister Tiffany. Her tone was cautious, no longer coloured by the sycophantic admiration she'd once held for Isabella. "I saw the news about Sarah." Mark began, his voice heavy. "She looks happy, Mark," Tiffany said softly, a hint of unspoken reproach in her words. "She does." He admitted, the words tasting like ash. "Tiff, I was a fool. I threw away something real for—" What a fantasy. An image Isabella was exciting, but it was all surface. With Sarah, there was depth, a foundation. I just never bothered to look at it, to appreciate it. I thought it was boring. He let out a humorless laugh. Turns out I was the boring one. And now, she's with a man who sees her for exactly who she is. A man who bought her a Rolls-Royce not as a trinket, but as a statement of her worth. The conversation ended with Mark feeling more alone than ever, haunted by the ghost of a life he had carelessly dismantled. Isabella's reaction was far less introspective and far more venomous. She learned of the engagement from a former friend who sent her a link to an online article accompanied by a single pitying word: "Wow." For Isabella, this was the ultimate humiliation. Her entire identity had been constructed around being Mark's dazzling superior replacement. Now Sarah, the woman she had openly mocked, was set to marry a man whose wealth and influence dwarfed Mark's tenfold. Alistair Finch was in a completely different league, a man whose circles Isabella could only dream of entering. Her bitterness became a corrosive force. The new, older benefactor she had been seeing grew weary of her endless, resentful tirades about Sarah and Alistair. Her obsession was unbecoming. One evening at a quiet restaurant, after she had spent 20 minutes dissecting a photo of Sarah's engagement ring, he simply placed his napkin on the table. "Isabella," he said, his voice cold and final. "This fixation is tiresome. I wish you well." He left her sitting alone at the table, a half-empty glass of champagne her only companion. Her fall from grace was complete. She had built her world on the reflection of a powerful man, and now with no man to reflect, her world had dissolved. Within months, she quietly sold her expensive condo and left Boston her reign, not ending with a bang, but with a defeated, silent whimper. In stark contrast, Sarah and Alistair's wedding preparations were a study in understated elegance and personal joy. They politely declined offers from Boston's top wedding planners, opting instead to plan the intimate affair themselves. The venue was never in question, the sweeping lawn of Alistair's coastal estate overlooking the ocean that had been the backdrop to so many of their meaningful conversations. The guest list was meticulously curated, limited to immediate family and a handful of their closest, most trusted friends. Sarah's children were deeply involved in the planning. Her son, now in college, helped Alistair select the music, a mix of classical pieces and soft jazz. Her daughter, a budding artist, worked with Sarah to design the floral arrangements, choosing wildflowers that grew naturally along the coast. One afternoon, as they sat on the floor of Sarah's office, surrounded by swatches and sketches, her daughter looked up, her eyes bright. "You're so happy, Mom," she said. "I haven't seen you this happy in forever." Sarah pulled her into a tight hug, her heart swelling with a gratitude so immense it almost hurt. This was her new reality, a life not of dramatic entrances and social victories, but of quiet, profound contentment. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, a perfect late September afternoon. The ceremony was held just as the sun began its descent, casting a golden, ethereal light over the proceedings. Sarah, escorted by her son, looked breathtaking in a simple cream-colored silk gown that flowed with the sea breeze. She wore no veil, only a string of pearls that had belonged to her grandmother. Alistair, watching her approach, had an expression of such pure, unadulterated love that it brought tears to Amelia's eyes. Their vows were not flowery or poetic, but were deeply personal and achingly sincere. They spoke of finding unexpected love, of mutual respect, and of building a future grounded in partnership and kindness. When Alistair promised to not only love and cherish Sarah, but to champion her dreams and honor her strength, Sarah's children beamed with pride. It was a union not just of two people, but of two lives seamlessly and beautifully woven together. Their life as a married couple was a quiet symphony of shared passions and comfortable companionship. They traveled extensively, not to ostentatious resorts, but to places of cultural and natural beauty, exploring ancient ruins in Greece, hiking through the Scottish Highlands, and chartering a small boat to navigate the serene fjords of Norway. Alistair was an attentive and engaged stepfather, taking a genuine interest in the children's studies and aspirations, becoming a mentor and a friend. Sarah's landscaping business, now rebranded as Sarah Finch Designs, became a leader in its field. She never used Alistair's name for leverage, but the quiet confidence and expanded vision his support gave her were undeniable. She took on ambitious projects, transforming urban spaces into green sanctuaries and designing breathtaking private gardens that were lauded for their beauty and sustainability. Alistair remained her greatest admirer, offering sage business advice when asked, but mostly he was just incredibly proud of her accomplishments, which were entirely her own. Looking back, Sarah often marveled at the sheer irony of her journey. The woman who had been laughed at for her old sputtering Volvo was now a respected CEO, a philanthropist, and the cherished wife of an extraordinary man. Isabella's scorn had been the catalyst, the sharp, painful push she needed to step off her old path and onto a new, undiscovered one. The Rolls-Royce, which now rested under a dust cover in their garage and was taken out only for special occasions, was more than just a car. It was a symbol, a reminder that one person's trash can be another's treasure, and the true value is often invisible to those who can only see the surface. Her new life was a testament to the fact that sometimes the most humiliating moments can become the foundations for the most glorious triumphs. The years that followed Sarah and Alistair's wedding did not just pass. They were lived deeply and intentionally. Their marriage settled into a beautiful, enriching rhythm, a partnership built on a foundation of profound respect and an easy, intuitive understanding of one another. The grand, dramatic gestures that had marked the beginning of their public story gave way to something far more precious: the quiet, consistent tapestry of a shared life. Sarah's children, having navigated the turbulent waters of their parents' divorce, found a safe and nurturing harbor in the family she and Alistair created. They flourished under his gentle mentorship and their mother's renewed spirit, growing into compassionate and confident young adults who saw their mother's journey as the ultimate lesson in strength and grace. Their philanthropy became a cornerstone of their life together. Drawing from Sarah's own experience, they established the Phoenix Foundation, a charitable organization dedicated to providing grants and mentorship to women over 40 who were starting new businesses or re-entering the workforce after a life-altering event. Sarah took the helm personally, reviewing applications and meeting with candidates, her empathy and insight making the foundation a resounding success. She saw echoes of herself in their stories of resilience and ambition. Alistair worked quietly in the background, leveraging his vast network and business acumen to ensure the foundation's longevity and impact. It was in this shared purpose that their partnership found its deepest expression, transforming their personal happiness into a legacy of empowerment for others. One crisp autumn afternoon, about 5 years into their marriage, a thick cream-colored envelope arrived, bearing a postmark from a small, unfamiliar town in Oregon. The handwriting was hesitant, almost frail. Inside, Sarah found a multi-page letter. It was from Isabella. The tone was nothing like the sharp, condescending woman Sarah remembered. Stripped of its armor of wealth and social standing, the voice in the letter was one of quiet reflection. Isabella wrote that she owned a small floral shop, a business she had built with her own hands. She spoke of the simple, tangible satisfaction of working with the earth, of creating beauty that was fleeting, but real. She didn't offer a direct apology. Her pride, it seemed, was not entirely gone, but she wrote at length about the hollowness of the life she had once craved. "I spent so much time trying to acquire the symbols of a happy life," she wrote, "that I never learned how to build an actual one. You were building something real the whole time with your business and your children. I was just too blind and insecure to see it. I mistook your quiet strength for weakness, and that was my greatest mistake." Sarah read the letter twice, then sat with it by the window watching the leaves fall. She felt a complex swirl of emotions, not triumph, not pity, but a strange, distant sense of closure. The anger and hurt she had once felt were long gone, replaced by a profound peace. That evening she showed the letter to Alistair. He read it, then looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "It seems she finally found her own kind of peace," he said. "What will you do?" "Nothing," Sarah replied. And in that single word there was a world of healing. She had no need to respond, no desire to hold on to the past. She placed the letter in a box of old keepsakes and never felt the need to read it again. Her interactions with Mark also found a peaceful resolution. They would occasionally cross paths at university events for their children or citywide charity functions. One such evening at a fundraiser for the Boston Public Library, they found themselves standing near the same silent auction table. Mark was with his wife, a kind-looking woman, and their 2 young children were fidgeting nearby. He met Sarah's eyes, and for the first time there was no awkwardness, no lingering regret, only a simple mutual acknowledgement of their shared history. "Your foundation is doing incredible work, Sarah," he said, his voice sincere. "It's really impressive." "Thank you, Mark," she replied warmly. "Your kids are beautiful." Alistair joined them, shaking Mark's hand with easy courtesy. The conversation was brief and unremarkable, yet it signified the final smoothing of old rough edges. Mark had found a different kind of life, a quieter happiness, and Sarah was genuinely glad for him. He was a part of her story, the painful first chapter that had improbably led to the best one. As the years deepened their bond, Sarah and Alistair often reflected on the serendipity of their meeting. One evening on their anniversary, Alistair led her out to the garage. The silver Rolls-Royce sat gleaming under the lights. The chauffeur, a man who had become a quiet family friend, held the door open for her. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked, smiling. "For a drive?" Alistair replied, his eyes twinkling. "Down the coast. I thought we might revisit the scene of the crime." As they glided silently along the ocean road, the moon casting a silver path on the water, Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. The car, once a shocking symbol of a new reality, now felt like a cherished time capsule. It wasn't a statement of wealth anymore. It was a testament to a pivotal moment, a reminder that the most unexpected detours can lead you exactly where you need to be. That day at Amelia's party, Sarah said softly, I felt so small, so invisible. When Isabella laughed at my car, it was as if she was laughing at my entire life, at everything I had left. She wasn't laughing at your life, Sarah, Alistair said, taking her hand. She was laughing from a place of deep insecurity, terrified that her own life was as insubstantial as the champagne in her glass. I didn't give you that car to prove her wrong. I gave it to you to help you remember what I saw, the moment I met you, a woman of immense substance and timeless value. A classic. The Rolls-Royce was simply a frame worthy of the art. In that moment, nestled in the plush leather seats of the magnificent car, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Her story wasn't about revenge or one-upmanship. It was about discovering that self-worth is the one true luxury that no one can ever take from you. Her laughter, now rich and genuine, was a sound her family cherished. It was the sound of a woman who had not only weathered a storm, but had learned to build a beautiful, enduring life in the calm that followed a life far grander and more satisfying than any car or mansion could ever represent. Sarah's story is a powerful reminder that life's most dramatic twists can often lead to the most beautiful destinations. From the sting of public humiliation to the exhilarating arrival in a Rolls-Royce gifted by a billionaire CEO, her journey is a testament to resilience, self-worth, and the unexpected turns that fate can take. Isabella's cruel laughter backfired spectacularly, setting in motion a chain of events that not only transformed Sarah's life, but also exposed the fragility of a relationship built on superficiality. Sarah's tale is more than just a dramatic anecdote. It's an inspiring example of how to rise above adversity, embrace new opportunities, and find love and success in unexpected places. Her strength, grace, and unwavering focus on her own worth ultimately led her to a life far richer and more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. If Sarah's incredible journey resonated with you, if you believe in the power of resilience and second chances, then please like this video. Share it with someone who needs a dose of inspiration today. And don't forget to subscribe for more captivating real-life stories that will leave you breathless. What was the most surprising twist in Sarah's story for you? Let me know in the comments below.